Now let us really begin. And we are beginning with this lovely coronation image. And then we're going to move through the life a little bit of Charles VI of France, who started out, I forgot to turn comments off, it is stunning actually, who started out, comments, oh, they've changed it, they turn off commenting, there we go, who started out as Charles the Beloved, and then went through his life, and this talk is going to culminate in an event that sort of has become synonymous with Charles VI's reign, but it's an event that we have talked about before in a different context. But today I am doing a sort of on this day in history. So this event happened on this day in history 628 years ago. So do the maths, Go on then, 1393. But so it starts with Charles VI, who is crowned. He becomes king at the age of 11. And so he is known then as Charles the Beloved, you know, I mean, and why wouldn't he be? Look at this gorgeous, angelic little fella with golden hair being crowned. You know, great. Of course, what happened was that, this is really weird. I don't know how to, sorry, my images, oh, there we are on the bottom. Oh, I hate it when they change stuff. I like it. But so of course, what happened, you know, he was only 11, and so he had to negotiate quite a few things, including a lot of power-hungry wolves who gave him terrible advice and were serving their own ends, and you know, and it wasn't great for him at all, but by all accounts he did pretty well. So there he is again, looking very kingly, looking a bit older. I don't know, he's dyed his hair dark, or he's wearing a wig, and one of them, not the same person, is it? Golden-haired boy at coronation, quite curly, and dark-haired, he went for the dark bob in this one. These are all from manuscripts, from 15th century manuscripts. So he did quite well. He did quite well, but he had to negotiate, as I said, all of these kind of power-hungry, crazy people. And then one day something happened that made people realise that actually he was crazier than all of the rest of the crazy people put together. And what happened was that one of his main advisors suffered an assassination attempt and survived. It was only an attempt. He survived, and the would-be assassin fled to Brittany. And so Charles and his entourage decided to head off to Brittany to seek their revenge on this guy, but on the way to Brittany, Charles went completely bonkers, and he accused some of the people that were traveling with him of conspiring against him, and he just went completely mad, drew out his sword and killed. I don't know what that noise was. That was the sound of him killing a knight. Killed one of his knights, a guy who was known as the Bastard of Polignac. So I don't know whether that was because he was illegitimate or whether because he wasn't a very nice person, in which case maybe Charles made a good decision. Anyway, he was so crazy that he actually then went and killed another 3 people, 3 of his knights, before he could be restrained. And of course, then he was, manacled for his own safety and taken back to Paris. And this was the first major incident in a series of of major incidents, things that actually plagued him throughout his life. Now, back in the 14th century, people would have just said that Charles, who became known from Charles the Beloved, became known as Charles the Mad. They would have just said that he was batshit crazy. Poor guy, he was crazy. He was suffering from mental illness. It was probably paranoid schizophrenia. Obviously, don't know for sure, but everything points towards that. So, I forgot to move the images on. So there you go. So this is an image of Charles, slaying his knights. You can see him in the centre with a white horse. And because you can see, I haven't got a close up of this, but you can see the blue background and the fleur-de-lis. So it's in this one, and it's in this one, this blue background and the fleur-de-lis, and then in the centre, guy on the white horse, blue background, fleur-de-lis. So he killed, several of his entourage. He would also quite frequently forget his own name. He would forget who his wife was. So the kind of remedy for this, or the thing that they hoped would help him, was to give him frequent enemas. I don't know whether that was just to kind of make him scared, pull his socks a bit, but of course it doesn't work that way, and they didn't help at all. Of course, an enema isn't going to help against schizophrenia, but this is the 1390s that we're talking about. He did once also claim, or for a period of time, he also claimed that he was St. George, and he was asking for his emblem to be changed accordingly. To he actually honestly thought that he was St. George. That clearly didn't happen. This is an image from maybe slightly later in his life. This is Charles the Sixth in the black here, with the fancy hat on, pointing. And I think, as you can see, the black background with the blue, or the blue background with the fleur-de-lis remains. And this is an image from a curious series of books written by a man called Pierre Salmon, who is this little tiny, rather round-looking, diminutive fellow that Charles is talking to. So he's the chap on the far right of the painting. And Pierre Salmon wrote a series of texts for Charles VI. He's a contemporary of Charles VI, as a sort of, I think they served two purposes. The first purpose was to instruct Charles the Sixth. They were sort of instruction manuals, but the second purpose was as a sort of aid memoir, or almost like a photo album, sort of to remind him of series in his life, because obviously they thought that might help, because he was forgetting things and didn't know his wife, didn't know his own name, thought he was St. George. So this was supposed to help him. It's interesting that this illustrator, so this is illustrated, this illustration is from some sort of 50 years later. But it's interesting that the illustrator has chosen to also depict this group of men to the left of the painting, who are sort of in conference, and one of them, you'll notice, is pointing down to the animals at the end of the bed, which I will show you. It's a close-up of a monkey sort of petting a dog, and I think that, and this is my own analysis, but I think that this is a reference to all of the people that just thought that Charles VI was crazy and wanted to discredit him because of his mad episodes. Wasn't too hard to do. This is a close-up from that image. Wasn't too hard to discredit him, because the poor guy, I mean, he would do things like he would run through the palace stark naked. On so many occasions this would happen, that the courtiers had to barricade corridors so that he couldn't run around the whole palace, and then it would normally end up outside in the garden and roll around in the mud. He would hide in cupboards. He had a fear that he was made of glass, and apparently this is quite common for people suffering from schizophrenia. He had a fear that he was made of glass, and so didn't want anybody to touch him because he was afraid that he would break. He didn't want to bathe because he was afraid that he would break. So he was in a right old pickle, poor guy. And the thing is that in between all of this, when he was lucid, he made really good decisions, and he was actually quite a good king. Unfortunately, he wasn't terribly lucid very often, and people took advantage of this. And so the country, which wasn't in great shape when he came to the throne, so this is so we're talking kind of 1380s, 1390s. If you remember Boccaccio and the Decameron, and when that was written and why that was written. So that was written in the middle of the 14th century. I've just gone off on a tangent for a quick history lesson here. So 1348, the biggest plague ever, killed more than half the population, I think, throughout Europe. So France was suffering from that, and so then and still hadn't recovered. And then there was the 100 Years' War that was still raging with Britain, and so and then all these kind of mental, mad, power-hungry murderers were taking advantage of the king's troubles to then go and kill other mad, power-hungry murderers. So kind of in the middle of a war with England, France pretty much sort of entered into a civil war because of all this mentalness going on. And yeah, it wasn't a good place to be. So we come to the incident that I've already spoken about, which happened on this day, 28th of January in 1393. And it was an incident that began with a need to cheer everybody up. And so the excuse was that one of the Queen's ladies in waiting, and she was, I think, Isabel, so Charles VI Queen, one of her ladies in waiting was getting married for the third time. And it was something that the Queen always wanted to distract the king, and to sort of try and make him happy, sort of try and bring him out of himself. Maybe he needed to be in himself more. And so this whole feast with entertainment was arranged. And it became known as the Bal des Ardents. So do you remember this image from several months ago? So the Bal des Ardents, again, this is from a 15th century manuscript. This is by Jean Froissart, quite a famous French artist. He was more actually sort of Belgian, I think. So what happens is that the king himself and some of his close entourage dress up as wild men. Do you remember the wild men, the Vaudois, who would rampage through forests and carry women off that didn't want to be carried off, or sometimes secretly did want to be carried off, according to some of the images, I would say. So they all dressed up in these highly flammable costumes, as part of this kind of crazy, raucous entertainment on the night of the 28th of January, 1393. And it was all fine until Louis, the Duke of Orleans, who was Charles VI's brother, burst into the proceedings, absolutely out of his head on alcohol. I was going to use a really odd term for being drunk anyway. Drunk. And he clearly either hadn't got the memo that because these suits were highly flammable, he wasn't allowed to bring a torch with him, or no fire was allowed in this room, or he was just blatantly disregarding the rules because, of course, he kind of wanted, he wanted to take power for himself. So anything that he could kind of do to discredit Charles VI, was great for him as well. I don't think he meant what happened to happen, though. He sort of threw the torch about a bit. Some of the wild men caught on fire, then the rest of them caught on fire, and the whole thing ended up it was horrific, actually. So 4 of them died. The king was saved. Do you remember this? The king was saved by a young girl. She was 14 or 15. That's this girl here in the blue, because she recognised the king. This is the Duchess of Berry, Jeanne, I think, the Duchess of Berry, and she really quickly wrapped the king in her dress to put out the flames. Another person survived because you can see just to the bottom left here, there's a barrel and there's sort of a couple of people over it. One of the wild men managed to dunk himself in a barrel of wine, and he survived, but the rest of them didn't. And so this incident, really horrific incident, is often related to Charles VI and the crazy madness of the reign of Charles VI. And actually the whole court was made to do penance because the people of France couldn't believe that they'd been so irresponsible and it was so horrible, so they were all made to do penance. Charles VI didn't die then. He did die at the age of 61 in 1422, I think, of sort of natural causes. But yeah, poor thing. I just think, had he been alive today, he would have been hopefully treated. But in those days, they gave him enemas. Not the best, I'm going to say. I'm no doctor, but not the best. So there we go. On this day in history. I'm going to turn off images. There we go. And I'm going to turn comments on. Who's around? Oh, hi, Gaynor. Hello, Holly. Yeah. So that's that. All next month, we're going to lighten the tone a bit. So obviously, it is, thank you, Patatronique. Thank you, Gaynor. Next month, we're going to talk about St. Valentine, and then we might talk a little bit about Cupid. And then obviously I'm going to be lowering the tone by talking about some of the worst marriages in history. Illustrated, because we need to make sure that even though February is associated with Valentine's Day to a certain extent, we probably need to be brightened up a little bit, don't we? But we just don't want to make it saccharine, do we? We don't want to make things so sweet. How do I gather all the knowledge from my art? It's super interesting. Well, thank you very much for the start. It's a mixture of things. Some things I know because I've studied art. So I did a degree and then a history of art, not art, a degree and then a master's. So some of it I remember from there. So in my master's I did a medieval module. You'll notice that I do enjoy medieval arts and the manuscripts and so on. Some from books, some from the internet. I tell you what I find really difficult and really frustrating, and if I was gonna have a different career and I was interested in making a database, and this might exist, and if anybody knows whether this exists or not, then please tell me if it does exist. A sort of a database for images. I know actually there's Bridgman, isn't there? But I've just maybe answered my own question, but I don't think so. But specifically for medieval images, because I find it really hard to so I can find images, but then I find it really hard to cross-check the source and exactly which manuscript they're from and where it now is, and so on. Like, and believe me, a lot that you see on the internet, you see something and you have to cross-check it because sometimes it's wrong. Often it's wrong. And anyway. So if I find a database that's reliable, that would be amazing. But actually, I have just, as I've said that now, thought, oh, Bridgman, maybe that would be good. That would save me hours. Thank you. I love bringing art to life. That is my mission in life, to bring art to people that maybe think they don't like it, or maybe think it's a bit boring, or that it's not for them, or that it's too highbrow, or, it's not. Because art is largely about stories and people. Someone made this, whether it's 628 years ago or whether it's yesterday, somebody thought, okay, what am I going to include in this, and why, and what am I trying to say, and who am I trying to say it to, and that all comes into play. And a lot of the stories are fabulous, and a lot of the art is quite funny. Some of it's rude, it's across the board. It's as varied as people are varied, and I love it, and I love talking about it. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week when we will be into February. So we'll start doing sort of tiny type things. I'm going to try and have a theme for each month, just to kind of organise my brain a little bit more. And then I'm going to try and also link this up to a blog on my website, and just kind of make everything a bit more grown up and linked together, and so a place where you can find things, if you don't want to listen to a talk, or you haven't got time to listen to a whole talk. I'll try and put some more images on the website, relating to what I've been talking about in Elevenses, and so that you can reference and so on. So I'm trying to organise myself and to make that happen, because I think that would be great for all of us. Be great for me to be more organised, definitely. On that note, I'm going to go away and think about the poster for this, because they've been changing as well, and it's all evolving, isn't it? It's a great. So I'm kind of going off on one, but it's a very exciting journey, to use an overused phrase. So it's wonderful. Yes, I'm going to go and do the poster and then continue writing my Valentine's script. And I will see you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining. Bye.